Hi everyone. I'm Michelle. I'm on the youth council this year. This is my second year, and I go to Cass Tech. I am I go by she, her, hers, and today we're going to be doing a Q&A with um, our alumni Pamela Beltran and Alondra Alvarez. So if you guys want to introduce yourselves, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Pamela. I use she, her pronouns. I graduated from Cass Tech, and right now I'm attending Stanford University. And yeah, I'm a COC alum.
Hi, my name is Alondra. I graduated from Western International High School, and I'm currently at Michigan State University. I go by the pronouns she, her, and hers, and I've been a part of COC for 9 years now, since 2011.
Okay, so we have a few questions for you guys that we came up with. So the first one is, how did you start organizing, and what inspired you?
So for me personally, wait, hold on. So for me personally, I needed my sister was my babysitter, and I needed someone to babysit me in the summer. So I was 11 years old, and she started working at Congress Communities. And I remember she asked Maria if I could go through the summer youth dialogue, and it was for like high schoolers, and I was like a middle schooler, and I was like, oh my gosh, like no, like I'm too young, whatever. And I remember just learning so much at summer youth dialogues about like racism, about like who I was as Latina, and I just learned so much. And I feel like anyone who has gone through summer youth dialogues knows that when you come out of that program, like you're not the same. Like your mindset changes completely. So at 11 years old, I came out with this mindset, like, no, like this isn't right. Like I need to like stand up for my people. And I remember when I was 12, Adam, I don't know if anyone remembers Adam from COC. He took me to Washington, D.C. with the youth council, and we went to a DACA protest in Washington, D.C. And I was like, I think I might have been 12. And I was just like, wow, like, I didn't even know what DACA was. And then when he was like describing it to me and just like explaining like all this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean people aren't going to be able to like study just because they're like undocumented? And a lot of the people who were sharing stories looked exactly like me. They were like older Latinas or like older Latinos, and it was just so sad. And I feel like that really inspired me to like want to organize and want to get involved. So I got involved at a really young age, and I feel like it just became something that I love doing. So that is why like I continue to organize till now.
I want to echo some of the things that Alo said about starting with SYD. That's how I got really introduced into the work, just because it made me realize a lot of patterns of like racism in my community, a lot of inequities, even in like high school, and how I was navigating through the school system, yet there was a lot of inequities that were not addressed. So those were just things that really inspired me to keep going. And I think what helped me also the most to not just get involved, but continue, was all the support that I received from the like community members in COC, as well as the other members that I worked with in other organizations.
Okay. What are some things that influence, like, where did you find support in all of this?
I think kind of like what Pam said, like I found support within like my friend group, within like other leaders in the community, especially like Maria Salinas. Like I found a lot of support in her because I felt like she was always there to tell me like, oh, it's a fine, like you can do it. And even at a young age, like a lot of those terms, like even now, like some of them you look at those terms and you're just like, what does this mean? So like when you're 11, you don't know like all the terms that are thrown at you, like prejudice and stuff like that. So she was always sitting like next to me and like, oh, this is what white supremacy is. This is what this is. So I always felt like supported by her because I didn't feel like I was alone. And I didn't feel like, I don't know, she just always supported me in that way by helping educate me.
Also, along with that, I want to say that just like growing up in Detroit, I realized how there was a lack of resources and opportunities. And just knowing that my community had so much potential, yet that they didn't have those resources to succeed as much as they could, really frustrated me. And I think that I found it being a common feeling amongst me and my friends. And at the end of the day, we kind of just like would get together and talk about these things and learn more about the terms that Alo was mentioning, as well as kind of like within the Congress of Community Circle. I also learned a lot. And as I built like different connections with other organizations, I also just kind of networked with more people and got even more involved with community organizing.
I like how like in the youth council specifically, we have like that connection with our friends, like people we can talk to about like social issues, because like with schoolmates or whatever, it's like kind of like you don't know what space you're in specifically, so it can be hard to like have those certain conversations. So I completely agree. How would you describe your experience getting involved in your community? And well, we did kind of answer, do you think the people around you influenced it?
Personally, for me, I feel like it was very hard at a young age because, like that, I don't know, when I was younger, it wasn't really like cool to be like an activist. You know, like people, when I was 11, people were doing like galaxy edits and stuff on their photos. And I was over here like at movements and protests. So I just, like, I always felt like weird, you know, like it wasn't just normal. So I feel like for me, it was kind of like difficult to like have like those conversations that you're talking about, like to be able to talk to my friends like, hey, like, you know about like the social justice movement going on. Like it wasn't like that, but I feel like COC created that space for me where I was able to talk about like things I was interested in. So yeah, it was difficult, but I'm glad I had like the support system that COC provided.
Could you repeat the question, please?
So it was, how would you describe your experience getting involved in your community, and do you think the people around you influenced it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was I think it was very helpful to have that COC community, just because I like initially going into community organizing, I didn't know like the way to do it. And I think that COC did provide me that direction. And had it not been for COC, I probably would have stopped at some point or been discouraged. But I think that it was really helpful. So yeah.
That's good. What kind of cool stuff have you done as a result of being involved, and where has this journey taken you?
So for me, I got involved with 42 Forward because of COC. Like I was a COC representative for 42 Forward, and I just like, I feel like being involved with 42 Forward just helped me learn so much about like the education system and how messed up it is, and like how we need to like stand up for Black and Brown students and like make sure we're having like a quality education. And one of the projects that came out of that was the Unresource Fair, which was like, we held like this event downtown where we showcased like, it was kind of supposed to be like a resource fair, but like students painted like what they wish would have been resources in their school, and we showed articles of like different stuff that goes on in Detroit schools. So it was really cool and eye-opening to see people like just like amazed at the fact that like they didn't know that all this stuff was going on within our schools. And it really brought a lot of like the older generation to the event, because a lot of times that generation doesn't really know what's going on. So I feel like that was really like impactful.
Yeah, some of the things that I guess were pretty big throughout my journey. One of them included participating or kind of contributing to the WDET's Homeroom series. So the series is basically a series on education in Detroit. And like Alo was talking about, I was also involved with 482 Forward, which helped me learn more about like these inequities in our school systems. And kind of like translating that knowledge into information that could be passed out to the larger community was really helpful. Also, one of the things that I was really proud of was working with DAM, one of the organizations that I helped found with some of my friends. And we basically organized the March for Our Lives march in Detroit, where 10,000 people showed up. And it was huge just to see.
I remember that.
Yeah, so many people support and actually like come out and advocate for Black and Brown lives in Detroit specifically. And it being a larger movement with March for Our Lives was also like huge for me. So
yeah. And you guys mentioned 48-2 a lot, which is an organization I'm also part of the cohort representing COC, which is the reason we're doing this live today. It's all to highlight youth advocacy, which you guys are obviously both. It's given you that opportunity to be advocates as youth. So I think that's really cool. Why do you think it's important to have a social and racial justice lens in organization?
So I feel like it's important because it gives like more like meaning and more like motivation to continue organizing. Because I feel like I'm not gonna say like anyone can organize, but basically like anyone can organize. But when you organize with like passion and like knowing that like you're organizing for a purpose, it kind of like it makes you like more motivated. You know what I mean? So it's not just like, oh, I organize this just because like it's cool. No, it's like, no, I organize this because people are dying. People are not getting resources to be educated. Like when you organize with purpose, you actually can get a whole like group of people together to support you and back you up and help like build a movement.
So when it comes to kind of like having that racial and social lens, I think it can get kind of problematic in the sense of like education. I'm talking specifically of like education, higher education, and how a lot of times like professors are doing studies on Black and Brown communities when in reality it might not be very I guess ethical. So I guess what I'm trying to kind of get at is that it's important to realize like your positionality in it, as well as kind of like acknowledging what privilege you have. For example, I do a lot of work with immigration rights. And although I'm not an undocumented immigrant, I'm a child of undocumented immigrants, and that kind of helps me to kind of understand that experience. But at the same time, I acknowledge that that isn't my experience. And in every work or every organization that I work with, I try my hardest to never speak for others and kind of create a platform for others to, I guess, like use their voice in different ways. So yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge the privilege that you have, but also try to work for the greater community as well.
Yeah, I get that. If you guys want to ask questions, the people on the Instagram live, you guys can just comment them and we will look at them and answer them as well. Just if you guys had questions for these ladies. Okay, next question. Why do you think it's important for youth to be involved in their community?
I feel like it's so important for youth to be involved just because I feel like there's room for everyone. Like it's not just like organizing, like you can be involved by like painting the murals, by literally there's so many like resources out here for youth. And it's just important because it kind of helps you learn stuff outside from the education, like the typical education curriculum. I feel like I've learned so much outside of like just going to Western class, you know. I feel like I've made a lot of connections, so it's really important to like be involved in your community.
Yeah, I also wanted to echo some of the stuff that you said. I would kind of like focus also more on talking about how oftentimes the work that I did related to my own experiences and the disadvantages that I kind of like experienced throughout my life. But I also think that organizing is important for everybody, just because if you're not a part of that community that's being or like going through that experience, you can still be helpful in providing them the resources to actually carry out that work. So I think that it's just helpful to ensure that everybody receives the opportunities and resources that they should have, and which a lot of times is not like done here in America. But that's why we're organizing, because we know that people deserve better, and we know that we can work towards that.
Okay, so someone actually has a question. What can we do to be active during the pandemic, like right now?
So I feel like you can use like your social medias to educate people on like what's going on. I've seen like a lot of TikToks that 482 Forward and COC has been doing. Like that's just amazing. Like everyone's on social media right now. And even if you're just like translating like the governor's executive order to your parents and putting like a status about it, sharing resources, like that's how you can stay involved through this pandemic.
Yeah, I think that the pandemic kind of works to magnify all the inequities that are going on right now. For example, like it kind of shows the inequities in economic aspects, where a lot of Black and Brown communities are disproportionately affected, and also undocumented immigrants. So I think it's important to kind of like realize those relationships between the current work that is going on, and also like how that's related to COVID, and how COVID has kind of like impacted that even more. So for example, I have been working with the Period Movement, which is a national organization that works to combat period poverty as well as period stigma. And right now they're focusing on how COVID has actually worsened period poverty, and kind of working to address those problems. So I guess on top of doing it through social media, also like see those relationships and see how you can be helpful in like uh I don't know how to explain it.
I get you. Okay, so there's another question. What are common challenges that youth organizers experience, and what advice do you have for youth who experience those challenges?
Ooh, I have a really good one for this one. I think that throughout organizing, I had to come to realize that not everybody is going to agree with you. Not everybody is going to fight the same fight that you're fighting. And for example, this kind of like came up in my high school like career, when I was organizing and kind of trying to bring attention to the fact that there was lead in our water. A lot of times the teachers thought that I was like trying to hurt the reputation of my high school, when in reality the issues related outside of like that building and affected a lot of community members in Detroit. And so I think that just realizing that you are doing this work for a reason, and regardless of somebody supporting you or not, like this is something that you should do, and that regardless of anything you will have some support. And it might be a little like I guess intimidating to do it, intimidating to be that person, but you can totally do it, and just know that it's going to change and help so many people.
I agree with what Pam said, and actually, like, it's kind of funny because, like, today, 2 years ago, it came up a status that I put on Facebook. I like put a picture of my graduation photo, and I was thinking about it because after I put a status about how like my in 10th grade I didn't have like a AP teacher for a whole semester, and I was just kind of like going off, but kind of like explaining about how like this is unfair and that we need to invest money and resources into public education. And I remember I was a senior, and that was when I was in high school. I was like super involved with 484, like literally so involved. So I didn't care. Like I was gonna advocate for Black and Brown students no matter where I was, use my platform. So I remember my senior teacher, she pulled me to the side and took me out of class. And she was literally like, you need to take off that status. Like, you're making the school look like a beep hole. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I felt so bad because she was like a senior advisor. So she was like in charge of like the senior class. And I was vice president. So I felt like I was being so disrespectful. And I just felt terrible. And I remember like, I was just like, it really killed my mood because I felt like I had got so many shares and like people were like, yes, like you're right and stuff like that. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe she told me that. like that's true, like why would I put that? And then I remembered that what I was doing, kind of like what Pam said, like I was doing something positive. I wasn't trying to like make the school look bad. Like I was being real on what was going on inside the school, and I wasn't gonna let her shut me down, because then that shuts us all down completely and we're not gonna get the resources. So I realized that like you can, like those that you love are not always gonna support you, but you need to do what you love, because at the end of the day, like you need to support all of those around you.
I get that for sure. Something for me is that like my parents, or like even family members, you know, like they won't have the same views as you. So it's like really crucial to again be respect what you've learned from before all of this, but also consider that not everything is how it used to be, or not everyone has the same ideologies. Like for me, it's like the biggest with my family because, you know, we're Mexican, like we're traditional.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, it's just hard to like teach, I guess, the older people how the world changes and there's new things and new problems. And I feel like that's another thing, like how you said, um, like you felt like you shouldn't have said anything. I feel like sometimes we are accustomed to not say anything and like just deal with the problem like separately, but I think it's good that you stood up for yourself.
And I
Yeah.
think Michelle, oh,
Oh, sorry. I wanted to add to that and kind of just like knowing how there may be like some, I guess, like aspects of culture that are very ingrained in us, or very ingrained in our community, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. For example, a lot of like homophobia and anti-Blackness in the Latinx community. I think that a lot of times I've had to have conversations with people in the community and kind of address that, because at the end of the day, like we know it's wrong. And some people try to reason it by saying that, oh, like it's something that we've always like talked about and that we've always kind of like done, but that's not an excuse for anything. And just know that even though it might feel weird to have to stand up to a family member or a friend, like in the long run it will have a larger impact.
yeah, I think too, like everything you guys said, like literally that's still stuff that I deal with today. And I feel like there's a difference between like educating and being disrespectful. So I kind of like when I'm trying to like educate like my dad and stuff, I like am very careful with how I word things, just because I know that like his mindset and my mindset are not the same, and they're never going to be the same, because like we've had experiences where we've learned that like we come, it's really sad to say, but we come from like a very like ignorant, like I'm not trying to bash our culture, but we're very like Pam
Yeah.
said, like anti-blackness, homophobic, like stuff like that. That's very like ignorant, and we need to realize that like you're never gonna like be able to like talk someone out by the way like that they think. You know, it takes like a long time. So continue to have those conversations, like Pam said, and just make sure that like regardless of where you're at, even if it's at the Thanksgiving table, if you hear something that's not right, like you check people. Like this past Thanksgiving, my uncle kept saying the N word, and I checked with him, and he was like, "Why are you acting like you're not from the hood?" And I would just like looked at him, and I was just like, because I'm from the hood does not mean I need to be ignorant. And like I've gone to college and I've been in spaces where I've learned that that is disrespectful and that's not appropriate. So I was just trying to help him out. So you need to remember at the end of the day, like as long as you're trying and putting your part, like that's all that matters. If people don't want to take your advice, that's on them.
um what was I gonna say? Oh, I feel like I also don't blame my parents. Like obviously they don't want to be ignorant, like just because, you know, they're old. But I think it's just like things like that are learned and they're practiced sometimes. So it's just like it's a mentality. And if they're really strong on it, it's gonna be hard to learn something new when you've like known something your whole life. So I get that you don't want to bash, but it's kind of like, you know. Um, but moving on, um, why do you think, oh, there was another question actually. Do you think you can have a career in community organizing?
Yes, I am so passionate about this. I remember like when I was in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like literally was like, I don't want to give up community organizing because I love it. And I remember my dad was like, that doesn't pay. Like you need to become a nurse. And I was like, you're right. I should become a nurse. And I remember like there were so many like opportunities at my high school where like you could go to VOTEC to get like a nurse, whatever, like a assistant nurse certificate or something. And I remember I was just there like, oh, like this isn't for me. Like, like I don't even like touching blood. Like, oh, like, like it wasn't right. And even to this day, like a lot of people tell me like, why do you want to go into community organizing? Like it doesn't pay. But I feel like to me, I found like value in helping others instead of value in money. Like money is important, but I feel like to me, like I find like more importance in helping change the system, helping others thrive. So I feel like I don't know, I'm gonna make a career out of community organizing. Don't know how, but I'm gonna figure it out.
Yeah. Along with that, I think it's like, I remember trying to explain it to my parents that I wanted to go into kind of like that field. And a lot of times they were like, oh, like it's not going to pay. But at the end of the day, I think it's really, really important to realize that you can be an activist in every field. And for example, like I want to go into like law and government and kind of like change policy directly. And that will have like a direct impact on like, I guess, the community. But I think that recently I started taking a computer science course. I never thought I would do this, but it's really crazy how you can use like code to create like a program that helps a lot of people. For example, one of the students in my class created code to kind of like contribute to I forget, but it's like the medical device that has been used a lot for COVID. And so basically, he developed that code, and that code was used to jumpstart that program, and is helping millions of people today, in Peru. So it's crazy how you can do anything in any field. You can even do it in the medical field. You can do it in journalism. Anything that you do, as long as you have the purpose of giving back to people, of helping people, you can do that. And yeah, so don't think that it won't pay. Don't think that you're limited to one career, one field, because you're not.
I really love how you said that you could be an advocate in any field that you have. I feel like that's so true, and that's like some people think that it's just like one thing where it's like, oh, you just stand outside and like do protests. Like that's not it at all. I feel like that's like the main thing, like when I tell people like, oh yeah, I'm an advocate, they're like, so like when do you do protests, this and that, and I'm just like, that's not all we do. But okay, I think we had another question. Oh, never mind. Okay, so what are I think we answered that, the mistakes. So what are some mistakes you've made and things you've learned, like maybe the hard way? Okay.
So I think personally for me, I I wasn't practicing self care as much as I should have. I didn't really prioritize it in high school, and it just felt like at at a certain point I felt like very burnt out that summer after I graduated. Especially with the fact that like I was soon going to college, and I just felt like I didn't know, like like I just didn't feel motivated to do anything. So once I got to college, like I really, really started prioritizing self care. I started saying no to things. I started to, like, if I don't want to talk after 5 p.m., like it's fine, because I always had that guilt in me that like, "Ugh, if I don't make it to this meeting, I'm like the worst person in the world." But I really learned to like value that be I can't help others if I don't help myself. Um, so that's something that I prioritize all the time. Like I always ask my friends, like also like, hey, how are you doing? Have you practiced self care? So I really regret not practicing like self care when I was younger.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with that. In high school, after doing SYD and realizing all of the inequities in the world, I kind of felt like I was to kind of combat everything. So I kind of became involved in every aspect. I did gun violence, access to higher education, sexual assault, immigration advocacy, all of these things that I was super passionate about. And I swear to you, in high school, every single day of junior year, I would sleep at the most 2 hours. And that was really, really bad because I was doing work. I would get up at 2 in the morning, do work. Then I would go to school. Then I would organize all afternoon and then go to sleep, wake up at 2 in the morning and do the same thing every day. And I think it's just really important to realize that you do have to take care of yourself, like Alo said, because at the end of the day, I got burnt out so badly. Once I stepped foot on college campuses, it was over. Like it was so hard for me to get back into organizing just because I had done so much of it. And now it's just easier. And also to speak to the guilt, I think it really hit me when I came to college just because I was a lot busier. I was getting involved in different things, and it was hard to give back to my community directly because I was doing work in other communities that really weren't mine. But at the end of the day, there should be a balance between self-care, doing the work that you love, and kind of like just like stepping back when you need to, because you need to learn how to say no, and you need to keep yourself in mind whenever you're like organizing and doing stuff like that.
Can I add something really quick?
Yeah.
Um, I also think for me, like a mistake I made was thinking, and I feel like Pam, I feel like you can kind of relate, thinking that I always needed to be like an activist and an organizer, and didn't realize that it was okay to have fun, and it was okay to do things that I like. Like I didn't have a balance between like my work life and my social life. Like it was just work, 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 organize meetings, this, that, like. And once I got to college, like it also felt like I don't know, like I felt like guilty because it was like I would leave and there was like really cool events on campus where you can meet people, but I would come because I was like, wait, no, there's like this event going on back home, and I need to be there. So I feel like it's okay to like do stuff that's fun, especially when you're young, because this is like the youngest you'll ever be. So you need to make sure that you're doing like good work and like organizing and stuff, but also like enjoying like your teen years. So that's just something, a mistake I wish. I mean, a
Also,
mistake I
to
made.
add on that, I think once you become a community organizer or you become very involved in activism, it's easy to fall into the idea that you have to stand up for everything that you see. And for example, this comes up in my classrooms when, like, the past week, a professor tried to use the N-word in an educational way. And that really frustrated me and a lot of students in the Stanford community. So I think that when it comes to little things like that, like just know that if you do feel comfortable, you should stand up to it. But at the end of the day, like don't feel pressured to stand up for every little thing because that can be so damaging to you. And it can make you feel pressured to the point that you are going to completely want to stop and not do this again. So pick and choose your battles, and if you're not able to do that in that moment, try to have those conversations after, or maybe talk to other students in your classroom or in the place that this happened and see if like somebody else can do that work.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. It can be like overwhelming at times, like to feel like the world is in your hands. You know what I mean? Because it's like you are put on this pedestal that you are an advocate, but sometimes like you can't do everything yourself. And I feel like that's another thing that we learn in like the youth council and other youth organizations, is that we need a team like who will be supportive and will help you fight the battles that you need. And I feel like adults also do that, like helping you understand that as you grow, you'll like become a better person, and like not everything is gonna have to be just organizing. I totally get that. Okay. One of the questions that someone asked, oh, Maria asked, what will you keep doing in Detroit? What will Oh, what will keep you in Detroit after you graduate?
I think my people keep me in Detroit. I think the amount of work that everyone puts in to organizing and just being an advocate for one another, that's what really makes me like want to come back home after graduation and just like continue like serving my community, whether that's like running for office or like just becoming a part of like nonprofit and helping youth. I feel like that's what really like it just motivates me to see everyone like working so hard and yeah, I just like, yeah, I need to go back and help my people. I need to be a part of that.
Yeah,
Future
for
mayor.
sure.
You're the future mayor, Alondra.
Huh?
You're the future mayor.
But yeah, I think going along with that as well, I think it's always the community that brings me back. But at the same time, I feel like whenever I get like burnt out in school, whenever I kind of like am down, going back to my community always grounds me and reminds me that I come from such a powerful like community when it's just crazy. It's a good feeling to know that like I come from Detroit and that there's so much power and potential in Detroit, and that's I think what keeps me coming back. And to answer like I guess if I would come back after graduation, I think I would. I'm trying to buy a house in Detroit at one point, but yeah, I think I will always come back and try to serve my community as in whichever position in my life I am in.
I just want to add, I feel like it's important to like always come back to your roots because like they've made you who you are. So I feel like after I'm done with life, like I can travel, I can explore, but I like want to come back to Detroit to like see where like the place that I've made is like, if that makes sense. Okay. Next question. What are some admirable movements to you or youth you look up to?
I think I look up to like just all the youth in our community, especially like 4A2 Forward and COC. I feel like you guys have all done like amazing work. And even after, like, I mean, like, I can't always keep up with like everything that's going on because college is hard and like, like you're gonna spend so much time in the library and stuff. But every time I do see something, I'm just like, oh my gosh, like everyone is just so like, wow, like this is so amazing. Especially this week since like this whole week and the whole quarantine, I've been seeing you guys like use social media. And I know I talked about that a bit, but you guys don't even understand like how amazed I am and how proud I am. Because it's just something that you don't see a lot. Like people are making TikToks to become TikTok famous, but you guys are making TikToks to like educate people, and that's just something that like you don't see all the time. So I feel like I just admire you guys, and I'm just like, wow, like I wish I was you guys when I was younger. Like you guys are cool, you guys are amazing.
It's so sweet. Thank you. I appreciate it so much. Because like I don't know, like when we were doing the idea, I was like, that is so cool. And I feel like it's so nice that we have the platform where it's like, I don't know, like if I was to make a that kind of TikTok like on my own page, like I don't know how people would take it, but like I have a whole organization that is supporting me and I feel like that's really nice.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, I want to echo a lot of that just because I'm really, really inspired by like all the work and activists in Detroit. Kind of just like seeing it on social media is like what inspires me to continue to do work like on college campuses as well as like back in Detroit, just because it's like I don't know. I swear I tell so many people about the city and I'm just like, wow, like you guys don't even know there's so much potential. Like I know these like kids or like, kids from Detroit, these youth from Detroit are gonna change the world. Like y'all don't even know. But I don't know, I talk to people about it all the time just because it's I see myself in every activist in Detroit, and I see how kind of like my experience are similar and how that journey has kind of like led me to the place that I am today. So yeah.
I completely agree with both of you. I feel like our youth, like my own peers, like I'm so inspired by like all my friends and it like motivates me so much. Like it's like I can see like everyone that's ever been on the youth council, like I don't know, like they're just so inspiring. It's like people just like me who live in like this city, like who are of my people, like we're all gonna go so far. And I feel like I'm so lucky to be part of the youth council and to be part of like Maria says, like the pipeline of like advocates, you know, because like we have so many, like I look up to all the alumni. Like it's just, I don't know, like it's something that I'm proud to be a part of. And um like even when I'm on in youth council meetings, I'm like, wow, like we're really doing stuff, you know what I mean? Like even if it might like feel significant, it's like we're so like we're fun people, we're cool, like oh my god, I said we're cool, but it just makes me so happy because it's like we all care so much about the world, but at the same time, we're teenagers. Like we have fun, and I don't know, it's just really cool. Um, oh, Yvonne asked if she would, you guys, oh, if Alondra would hire you, when you're mayor of Detroit, Alondra.
If I'll hire Yvonne? Definitely. That's not even a question. Her and Diego and all y'all. I'm gonna have like the largest team ever. They're gonna be like, oh my gosh.
Good. Okay.
There was
Well,
also another question that somebody asked. It's how can we get more involved in activism in schools? Yeah. I think I can talk about the things that I've done on college campuses. Well, it's kind of different. It depends like where you're at, but you can always get involved. Here in college, I kind of became involved with an organization called FLIP, and that's the first gen and low income partnership on campus. So it's basically a organization that advocates for the first generation and low income students on campus and ensuring that they do have the resources to succeed. I am also working with Dream Catchers, which is an after school tutoring program for middle schoolers in the Palo Alto area. And these middle schoolers are from low income backgrounds. And basically, the program aims to decrease that achievement gap and ensure that these students can also be successful in the future. So I'm like a teacher for them, and that's something that I'm like really, really passionate about. I also am doing work with the period movement through remote ways. So basically, right now I'm, how do I say that? I guess working to change legislation to get rid of the tampon tax in Michigan, which is a tax that is put on menstrual products. And a lot of products like Viagra are not taxed while menstrual products are. So it's really important to change that because it contributes to period poverty and other inequities in our everyday lives. Yes.
So this question is actually something like I'm always like thinking about too, because when I got to college my freshman year, I remember I was like, so where's the organizing and stuff like that. But literally like anything you do on campus is like a form of like organizing or activism. And I've learned that simply because being at a predominantly white institution, like they don't want you there. Like they really don't. Like, and I had to learn that like the hard way. So just being on campus and planning like events and stuff like that to like show that we're here and we're not leaving it's just like a simple, I say simple way, but it's so hard to organize on campus, y'all. It's like a simple way of like doing like activism and community service, community organizing. And also when I was in high school, like if you're involved with like different organizations that are doing movement, like talk to your principal and see like if you can kind of like bring that into your school. I remember when I was involved with the women's oh, wait, what was it again? I was like, wait, I was in high school. The Women's March Youth, like their board that they had, it was like a nationwide like youth board. I remember I was really involved, and they were like, we're gonna bring this movement, the National School Walkout movement, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, how am I gonna bring this to Western and stuff like that? And I remember talking to my principal, and even though he said no, I remember I talked to Dr. Vitti. So there's like little ways that you can get like activism in your school and become like community organizers even if you're still like in high school. You don't have to wait till you get to college to like do it.
Yeah, I get that. And I feel like the main thing that you're gonna need in like being active in your school is support, like either from a teacher, your peers, or the organization you want to work with. But besides that, I think finding clubs in school that are around like justice could help, or creating your own club, seeing if that could be possible. I know that some girls that went to Fordson, they like created a mental health club, and I feel like that's really cool. So I feel like if there's like you can't find support and like you really want to make a change, that you should take on the initiative and like find support within peers or teachers, and yeah, or your the rest of your community. There's another question. What do you guys think we should do to grow and make the alumni more powerful?
Was that Maria? I think we just need to
Powerful.
stay. Wait, what was that?
I said we're already powerful.
I think we just need to stay connected. We need to stay checking up on one another, because I feel like we've been talking about this. We have like an organization where we just feel welcome, and we feel like we can always just come back. So I feel like if you continue to have that, we're always going to be connected, and I mean we're going to continue to be powerful because everyone's doing like amazing things. But yeah, just as long as we continue to like have a space where it feels safe, and it feels that you can always like, I don't know, just come and talk about whatever it is you want. It doesn't always have to be about like advocacy and stuff like that. It could be just about like anything. And I feel like we already created that space. We need to make sure that we're like maintaining that space and continuing to like invest time into that, creating that like environment.
Going along with that, I think that like it's really important not to just like put that pressure or responsibility on COC on its own. I think that we should, as alumni, be reaching out to each other and like seeing like how we can be of support, because at the end of the day we're all like in different spaces, we're all doing different things, but we can all be beneficial to other people in some way. So I think that it's really important to kind of like network, whether it's from within like from past to future or from the future to the past. So I think like I guess making sure that we are networking with each other and seeing how we can benefit from each other and grow from each other is really, really important.
Yeah, I think that's important too, like the connection that we all have from each other. Like, I know that some people on the youth council this year, like they wanted help on their essays, and there was COC alumni that helped them out. It's like it's so I feel like it's so special to have that kind of like person you can go to. It's like, yeah, we know like the same thing, and like it's kind of they grew in the same manner in a way. So I feel like it's really cool to um, have someone to turn to that like knows the kind of person you are, I guess, because you're in the youth council. I don't know if there's any more questions, but is there like anything that you guys can think of that maybe you want to say?
I feel like just something that I always always want to say is just to continue to like do what you love, try new things. Personally, for me, I was always scared to get told no, because I feel like you when you're young and when you're of color, you kind of like struggle with like feeling, I don't know, there's like the imposter syndrome, like you feel like you're not good enough, you feel like you're not qualified. And I feel like I struggled with that like a lot, and a lot of people like they don't think you do, because it just seems like, oh, you know, like you're so confident and stuff like that. But it's okay. It doesn't matter if people tell you no. It doesn't matter if you don't feel like you're qualified enough. Like, just go for it. Like, you're young, you can do anything. And I feel like that's something that I had to learn too. Like, it doesn't matter if I don't feel like I'm qualified for like this internship. Like, I'm gonna apply, and if they don't accept me, it's fine. So yeah, just do whatever makes you happy. Know that you're capable of so much. Um, so yeah.
I think I would also go along with what Ala was saying, and kind of talk about how a lot of times you may feel discouraged. Something might not be going the way that you intended it to go. But at the end of the day, if you keep pushing and if you keep working towards that, it is very possible that you can bring that change about. I would also say not to compare yourself to other activists. Everybody's doing their own work. Everybody has their own experiences, and don't necessarily like look to other activists and be like, oh dang, like they're doing this, like they're doing that, like that's amazing. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Because at the end of the day, like I said, we all have different responsibilities and we all have different experiences. So your experience with community organizing and activism is going to be very different from the experience of somebody else. So just keep that in mind and focus on the work that you're passionate about, the work that you are willing to do and able to do. And that's going to bring you, I guess, the most, or has brought me the most purpose and happiness.
I agree with both of you guys. What was I gonna say? Oh, I feel like networking is really important when you're going into organizing. Even if it's just like meeting other people, you can be like, oh yeah, I know this person that I once met that could help us out. I feel like that's really important. And I feel like when the first time that I kind of had a connection that I could contribute to something that was going on in my community, um, yeah, his name was Leo. Um, it was just like it made me feel like so important and like I don't know, like it wasn't even for me. It was like for all these people and I felt like I was doing something for them. So I feel like that's really important. And like I try to do it whenever I can, like just to like know who people are because yeah, you need to know. I don't have anything else to add. Oh, if anyone else wants to add questions in the Instagram, we have around like 8 minutes. Or if you guys want to add something, give a shout out.
No, thank you, Michelle, for having this. I feel like it's so important. And I'm so happy that like the work that you're doing just inspires me and it surprises me because I'm just like, oh my God, Michelle. Like I always, every time I think about you, I'm always like Esther and JP's little sister. And then I see you doing all this work. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's so amazing.
That's so nice because like I look up to you and you too, Pam, because you guys like have made it so far and you're gonna be mayor, you know what I mean? So um, we actually did get a question. How did you guys balance doing activist work in school? Oh yeah, I really want to know that because for me, I really struggled in school. So
It was hard. It was really hard. That's all I have to say. Staying up late at night, doing homework, trying to study, stuff like that. But I feel like I've always been like a person who needs to make a list. And even during quarantine, I've had to make a list. So make a list. Like literally like during quarantine, I even had to put like shower, check. Like I'm such a list person. So if like you haven't tried that, maybe try it. It's kind of like it's really useful to me. So that's something that's always helped me even in high school and even now, just balancing out like activism and schoolwork and family time.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really important to ask for help when you need it. For example, like I was really, really struggling with CS lately. And I was telling my professor, I was like, you know what, like I'm doing all this activism and I'm trying to stay involved in my community, but I'm also trying to like pass my classes. So to him, we kind of had that conversation and we're like, okay, like what can we do? And he kind of encouraged me to ask for help for concepts and like stuff like that, but also asking for help within your peers within community organizing, and telling people when you need help, telling people when you're struggling in some way. I think it's really helpful just because when you're within an organization, it is made up by a team and people will have your back. So if you say like, hey, I'm really struggling with work, I'm going to be absent the following like week or so, somebody can step in for you and always like do the work that you're not able to do at that point. So always reach out for help when you need it.
another question, how do you balance relationships?
I feel like I feel like it's really hard because sometimes like I feel like this is something I struggle with. Like now that I'm in college, I'm in the keyboard. Sometimes like it's okay to have like so I always tell my mom's the person I vent to, and I vent a lot about because on an e-board, like you're gonna organize with your friends, and sometimes like it's hard to be in the like in a leadership position, and your friends just like not kind of like respecting your leadership. Because I know a lot of times that people think like, oh, like she's Alo, she'll let me slide, like not holding themselves accountable, and it's so hard. But I feel like it's so important to communicate with people, like this is like my work and I value this work that I'm doing. So I feel like the key to like maintaining any relationship is literally communication, transparency, like just making sure like you're really saying like what you feel. Um, and that has been key to like me maintaining like all my relationships, whether they're professional, just friendships or stuff like that.
Going along with that, I think it's like kind of hard to be taken seriously sometimes, but I think that it's important to tell the people that you're working it with, like what you're going through, how you're feeling, like Alo mentioned, just because I think when you do have those relationships among an organization and you know and you have friends, you like if my friend told me, hey, like I'm really struggling because you didn't do this, I'm having to do it and I'm having to do that extra work, I would feel for them. So I think that it's really important to have like that communication like we mentioned before, and just like telling people like, hey, like I'm doing this because I'm really passionate about it and I'm really sure that you're also passionate about it, so let's do it. So yeah, I think it's just like mostly about communication and letting people know how you feel and like your capacity at that time. And yeah.
Okay, so we have around like 3 minutes left. I don't know if you guys wanna say any last things at all. Well, if you guys don't have anything to say, I guess we can close out. So thank you guys both for taking time out of your very busy quarantine life. Well, actually, Pam, are you quarantining over there, or how does it work?
It's it kind of is weird, just because a lot of people left campus. I'm one of the very few people that stayed, and I'm actually the only person in my 3-floor building. Um, so I mean, I don't necessarily bump into people where I have to like social distance because there's nobody here. But I do try to go out just because like for mental health reasons, it can get really lonely.
Okay, I was just curious. But thank you both. Oh my God, you guys are the best. Thank you to all our viewers on Instagram for supporting us.
Mhm.
Shout out to all the COC alumni. You guys are my role models. And thank you for Sergio, Lindsay, and Saul for supporting us on the Zoom call. Um, you guys are all great.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Michelle.
thank you so much for having us. You
You're
guys
welcome.
are amazing, and I know you guys are going to change the world.
You're
Oh,
also
and thank you to 48 too for giving us this platform as well. Alondra.